Chapter 14. The next 3 months unfolded rapidly for me. Time passed by so fast. The excitement of walking down any given street and not seeing a single familiar face or landmark was intoxicating. Within the first week, I found a studio apartment I fell in love with and invested 6 months of rent up front. I loved the location. A tight-knit neighborhood with a laundry place at the base of the complex, which was the first I'd seen in all the options I'd viewed. There was a coffee shop within 2 blocks and a friendly little grocery store known citywide for super fresh produce and awesome crab leg stew. The studio I chose was 3 stories up. It was that or the bottom floor, but this one got me my own little balcony. It was cozy, and I'd brought just enough stuff to make it feel like home. Mostly pictures of me and my parents, and Maddie, of course. And then the signature art pieces Maddie had made special for me. Her handmade posters of us posed as superheroes was probably my favorite. Or maybe the one with her and I as matching detectives, me with my notebook, and her with her sketch pad highlighted in the scene. I couldn't be paid enough to part ways. They were custom made and one of a kind, never to be recreated. As a finishing touch, I had gotten a few cords of LED lights and wrapped one around the island in my kitchen and the other along the outside wall encompassing my porch. It added a warm, glowing ambiance that I loved sitting and soaking in while listening to the rain on the roof above me. I did everything to make the space my own, and mostly it acted as a tether, and the more like home it felt, the more it kept me from running back in the direction I'd come from. Facing the unknown can bring out some funny characteristics. Thankfully, I had a cozy reserve of money in my savings. It was enough to keep me on track for long enough to figure something else out. I had big plans. I was going to make connections, get published, the whole shebang, and I was ready to take life as it came to me. I remember stepping out onto my balcony one day and kicking my feet up onto the little metal-framed glass table I picked up for free outside another apartment complex just down the street. It had led me to one of my first rules of thumb. When you can, repurpose or redistribute. Never just throw away if you can help it. One man's trash is another's treasure. I'd spray painted the base a matte white, and then, as if channeling Maddie, I added a final coat of clear glass on a whim. The contrast in textures was so appealing. You could see the dry, dull appearance of the matte surface, but through a classy glossing. I'd made it my own. I remember smiling and thinking, I could do this whole city thing. I was already rising on my way to figuring things out. Falling on a budget, item number 1, had become free is fun. I remember closing my eyes and smiling, breathing in the city smells and appreciating that, even though it was riddled with 1,000 different scents, it was its own kind of fresh. Almost symbolic of the brand new beginning that was now unfolding for me. And I, then, had known exactly where I'd start. I'd been so confident. Rejection or how it might affect me hadn't even been thoughts on my radar. All I could see panning out in front of me was the return on 15 years invested between me and Maddie into the curation of the little treasure trove I'd brought into the city via my portfolio. I could just see the little powerhouse of personal history becoming a hit. The hysterical interactions between animals, mythological, and human creatures alike. They were brilliant in my mind. The unique take on stories we'd heard 100 times, only to take the concepts in our own direction to meet the same ends. It was a little Pandora's box full of Maddie's and my creations. I pictured unleashing them onto the city in a flood of magical colors and mental images. In that moment, I knew it was time to move to the next step. It was time to get cracking. I had queries to produce, outlines to cultivate, storyboards to accomplish. I had pictured acceptance letters pouring in non-stop to find me, resting on a stack of other acceptances, waiting for the big fish. So many of them. I watched myself through my imagination portal as I stuck my hand in and pulled out the golden ticket. The big fish. The brilliant smile on my face had widened and deepened until I came back to my body and walked myself inside for a refill and my laptop. It was time to start digging for leads and strings to find the perfect resting space for our brain baby. Chapter 15. After 6 weeks of working tirelessly to fill out letters of intent and send off summarized versions of the stories, along with ideals that we as the author and animator had hoped to accomplish through them. After an entire month and a half of madness and planning and filing away the notebook pages filled with contact information and other important points pertaining to each of the outlets I'd approached, including print-offs of various story samples from our collection, based on the general preference of each publishing house and agent I'd selected. After I'd rated every source that I could get my hands on, I was sure that eventually one of my queries would end up being a foot in the door to the Emerald City's abundant literary societies. I sat down and took a much-needed chill pill to take stock of all that I had accomplished. I patted myself on the back as I sifted through. I even gave myself a much-needed soak in the bath, complete with rose petals, candles, and lavender essential oils, to celebrate the milestone and the sense of accomplishment that had flooded through me after doing something all on my own, all for myself. An act of purpose and love in memory of something important I'd lost along the way. I finally looked back over the endless pots of coffee, the 187 completed emails and letters I'd sent to various agents, as many as there were locally for the genre and category of writing I'd deemed fitting for our style. To pass the time between query and response, I started writing in my journal, running outdoors, reading reviews, visiting the sites, and obtaining any literature I could get from all sources over what publishing agents and editors were currently looking for. I tied myself in knots of excitement until I realized my neck and back literally hurt from the strain I was putting on them. It was like the more inflexible I'd allowed my attention and mindset to be, the more the state of my body tended toward rigidity and being clenched, even down to my jaw. So I started stretching more to counterbalance. It felt nice, like my mind was yawning into motion in tandem, and reaching for higher spaces I normally didn't think to grab toward. Magically, the aches and pains started to dissipate. In one of these sessions, about 4 or so days into my practice, an intense picture came to mind. I had a couple hundred strings of light leading away from me. Attached to each was a little glowing ball of energy. My energy. No wonder I felt any certain way on any given day. I had a million little lifelines dangling in the universal pond, baited with little pieces of me and my memories of Maddie. And here I was, just waiting for a formal answer to the attention I'd spent, directing to each of those little bundles. It felt like standing naked in front of an entire city of strangers, waiting for them to line by line scratch off or add little pieces of themselves to my exposed body. It occurred to me for the first time in that moment, what if they don't like it? But deeper, that question went more like, what if they don't like me? What if I am rejected? Chapter 16. It was hard not to take it personally. I had too much time to myself to think about it. I had been writing my mom and dad little email updates, just keeping it light, telling them about my big ideas and plans for the future and what I was doing to accomplish them. I sent them an updated list each week, with all the new agents and editors I had reached out to in red. It was more for me than them in the end. It kept how much I'd done in perspective for me. Sometimes, without results, the real measure of worth can go missed. As more time passed without any answer, I felt like I was trying to account for my time in these weekly messages. I started trying too hard to stay busy, and eventually I woke up with the sniffles and eyes full of tears. I'll take any kind of answer, please. Just send me a response. I told myself that while I was sipping on a cup of ramen noodles. The stream of steam swirling from the mug face to stand between me and the dreary, rainy landscape outside, the sliding glass door leading to the porch. I set the cup down on the counter for a moment and made my way to the door. My hands throbbed with the warmth as I slid the mouth open and stepped into the dreary scene. Little droplets tumbled down to strike against my face from the cracks between the wood, making up the patio above me. I walked out to the edge and peeked over, letting the rain pour over my head and down my face. It was refreshing. It felt less dreary and more exhilarating. Suddenly, as a peal of thunder rolled through the scene, a new idea came to mind. It was perfect weather for a run. I'd always loved running in the rain. I stuck my hand out. It didn't feel cold. It was actually pleasant. With that, I walked back into the studio, placed a china plate I had snagged from a garage sale in a private parking lot 2 blocks down on top of the steaming cup to keep it warm, and I made my way to the drawer with my sweatpants folded neatly inside. I was gonna go for a run in the rain. My heart raced over the idea of it, while I tied the laces of my running shoes a little tighter than usual. At this point, I was willing to do anything that might curb the painful weight of waiting.